Well, welcome. I'm Tracy Franson from Canyon View Medical Group, and I'm here tonight to talk about vaping and what it means for our teens. So I want to start out by asking, how many of you know someone who vapes? Okay. Is there anyone who doesn't know someone who vapes? Okay. Have any of you seen someone who vapes? Okay, everyone's seen someone who vapes, so we're all on the same page. So I had a young man come to me who wanted to be married in a Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints temple. And he said, I've started using an e-cigarette and I can't give it up and I need some help. And that was several years ago before the Juuls came out, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and it's become much more prevalent in our society. So we're going to go and ask the question, should we vape or not to vape? And the real answer to that is to know the facts. So let's go through. Every day in the newspaper, there are new articles in the paper. So here's one from, these are all from Deseret News right here, but FDA questions Juul and Altria commitment to combat teen vaping. The best RX for teens addicted to vaping, no one knows. Teen e-cigarette use is on the rise. Here's what we know and don't. U.S. Surgeon General warns of teen risks from e-cigarettes. Calling teen vaping epidemic, officials weigh flavor ban. And I added a slide yesterday from an article that came out 2 days ago. There's something new about vaping that goes on all the time. So I'm going to ask you to be reporters. We just looked at the newspapers here. And as reporters, we're going to ask the questions: who, what, when, where, how, and why. So let's start. I'm going to give you a test. I'm not going to give you the answers now because you'll find the answers while we're doing the presentation. So here's the test. Question number 1, and I don't know if you can read those from back there or not, so I'll read them to you. True or false? More than 6 of 10 youth believe that occasional use of e-cigarettes causes little or no harm, or some harm. True or false? Question number 2. Which of the following is a risk to youth and young adults who use nicotine? A, depression, anxiety, and other mood disorders. 2, B, nicotine addiction. C, difficulty paying attention and concentrating. D, reduced impulse control. Or E, all of the above. Okay, next question. Your brain continues to develop until about which age? 12, 18, 21, 25, 30. For those of us over 30, we must have a mature brain because it's not there. Not that it helped us any, but. Okay. Next question. Which of these tobacco products is most commonly used by U.S. high school students? A, cigarettes. B, e-cigarettes. 3, little cigars. Or D, hookah. Okay. And next. Question 5. Which of the following are reasons youth or young adults use e-cigarettes? A, availability of e-cigarettes in candy, fruit, and alcohol flavors. B, belief that e-cigarettes are safe. C, curiosity. And D, all of the above. Okay, so we're going to go now and see what we can find out about those questions and how we answer them. So the first question we're going to ask is, when do people start using e-cigarettes? So let me ask you, any ideas before we show you the results? When do you think people start using e-cigarettes? Yes?
When they start getting interested.
When they start getting interested. Okay, excellent. That is true. Okay?
17.
17. Okay?
I think it's younger than that, probably 15 or so.
15? Okay. Let's answer the question then. When do people start using e-cigarettes? So e-cigarettes entered the U.S. market around 2007. So we're 12 years ago when we started with e-cigarettes. And since 2014, they have been the most commonly used tobacco product among U.S. youth. So e-cigarettes have passed cigarettes, any other type of tobacco use. E-cigarette use among U.S. middle and high school students increased 900% between 2011 and 2015. And then it declined for the first time a little bit from 25 to 2017. However, current e-cigarette use, so people who are using them regularly, increased 78% among high school students during the past year, from 11.7% in 2017 to 20.8% in 2018. So in 2018, more than 3.6 million US youth, including 1 in 5 high school students. Anyone here in high school? Okay, so as you count down your students in high school, 1 out of 5 across the nation are using e-cigarettes. And in middle school, which is what grades? High school is 9 through 12. Middle school is 6th, 7th, and 8th. 6th graders, anybody here 6th grade? How old are you? 12. Okay, so 1 in 20 middle students currently use, not ever tried, but currently use e-cigarettes. So, question comes up, how do we use e-cigarettes? How do people use e-cigarettes? Okay, let's do some teaching. Okay, so we asked the question, how? So we have e-pipes. You can use these, they have the heating element built into there. We have e-cigars with the heating element built into there. These were the first ones. They were the large tank devices, and you would fill the tank up with liquid. And they were the first ones that came out around 2007 when it started. And then they came up with medium-sized tank, and then they have ones that are rechargeable e-cigarettes, and then both of them, and these look like cigarettes. Now, in 2014, we had something change. So e-cigarettes are rapidly changing product class. And so there are lots of different names. They're known by e-cigs, e-hookahs, mods, vape pens. So there's a new one that came out called Juul, and we spell it J-U-U-L. And it came out in 2014, and it's popular among our nation's youth because it's less of the aerosol that comes out when you use an e-cigarette. Reduced odor, it's a small size. It looks like a USB drive, and it makes it easy to conceal. So they look like a USB flash drive, among other shapes. So Juul started, and between 2016 and 2017, they had a 600% increase in the amount of Juuls that were used. And it now has the greatest market share of any e-cigarette in the US. And other companies are now starting to do that same type of thing. So this is what Juul looks like. So if you look here, you'll see this looks just like a drive for a USB. In fact, it's got a USB charging port. So if you want to charge the electric part of your Juul e-cigarette, you just plug it into your computer, the same place you plug your drives in. And so if a teacher comes by or somebody comes by, a parent comes by, it looks just like a USB port that's stuck in your computer. And these are different flavors right here. So there's 4 different flavors. This I got on the internet. This is from England. It's got the pound sign there. So 29 pounds for this starter kit. You can buy them in the US anywhere from $10 to $70, depending on what you buy. So every smoker, this is what it says, Juul starter kit. Every smoker needs to make the switch. It includes a Juul starter kit, a USB charging dock, and 4 different flavors with a 1.7 nicotine strength. This one has mango nectar, royal cream, golden tobacco, and glacier mint. Your journey starts here. Okay, so let's read some more facts here. It turns out that all Juul e-cigarettes, which again are the most commonly used by youth, they have a high level of nicotine. And not only that, but the type of nicotine that went into the Juul has changed from what the original e-cigarettes were. So 1 pod, which most users will smoke in a day, or use in a day, is the equivalent of a pack of 20 regular cigarettes. So using a Juul pod a day is equal to smoking a pack a day of cigarettes. Now, these products use nicotine salts, which allow particularly high levels of nicotine to be inhaled more easily with less irritation. So that's one of the things about smoking cigarettes is when you first smoke a cigarette, you get that down in there, most people do what? Cough. Okay, most people do not take smoke into their lungs well until they get used to it. Well, the way that they're doing with the Juul here has less irritation, so people can start using them without that reflex of the cough and what they're feeling with that. So it's particularly concerned for young people because it makes it easier for them to initiate the use of nicotine through these products and then progress from regular e-cigarette use and nicotine dependence. However, only 2/3 of Juul users aged 15 to 24 did not know that Juul always contains nicotine. Many of them thought they were just getting the flavor, and it was a good way to get flavor and get that taste versus having the nicotine. So, what can you use in a e-cigarette? Any idea what can be used in an e-cigarette? Junior, what do you think? Okay, so nicotine obviously is one. What else can be used in an e-cigarette?
Tobacco.
Okay, so tobacco actually can't, but the nicotine that's in tobacco can. Okay, well, let's look. So it turns out there's liquid marijuana, liquid THC, that can be put in there and vaped with that. Bath salts, which is another name. People say, I'm going to the store to buy bath salts. Most of us adults think that's, oh, we're going to get something to put in our bath so we can have a nice relaxing bath. Well, bath salts are a synthetic drug with mood-altering and stimulant properties. They're in the form of crystals, and they contain this mephedrone. There's also something called flakka, which is like bath salts. It's called gravel on the street, and it's a synthetic stimulant. It's more potent than bath salts. It's highly addictive, and it's small, clear, or pink crystals that they can be snorted, smoked, injected, or eaten. Okay. Third, hash oil. So hash oil is marijuana put into an oil that is stronger and gives more of the component that gives you the high. So it's the main psychoactive component in pot. And that's why hash oil has a reputation for being more potent. And it can be vaporized directly, or you can use it to make edible products like brownies or whatever else you're going to feed that no one knows that it's got the marijuana in it. You can also vape synthetic marijuana. You may hear people saying, I'm going to the store to buy some spices. That's a way of youth saying, I'm going to buy spice, or K2. K2 was a popular ski, so parents may think you're skiing. I'm going out on my K2s. So there are lots of things associated with it you can use in the electronic cigarettes. Now, there's also some psychedelics like LSD, and it's called DMT. It's a tryptophan drug. Tryptophan is a amino acid that we have in many of our foods. It's been changed to give you a psychedelic experience. It produces a brief but intense visual and auditory hallucinatory experience. So those are the things that you can see. So, other than getting a high, why would youth or anyone vape? Any ideas in your mind why someone would vape? Yes?
To stop smoking.
Okay, and that's what they said. He said that we would stop smoking. And when it first came out in 2007, we said, that was the aim, was to use that as a way for adults to quit smoking. When it first came out, it was never meant for people to use to become addicted or for youth to use. So excellent. Other ideas why people would vape?
I'm not quite clear what nicotine does for. Is it a high that's like a stimulant or a relaxer?
Okay, so the question he asked is he's not sure what nicotine does. Why do people use it? Is it a high or a stimulant? So it turns out in the brain there are multiple receptors. We call them nicotine receptors because nicotine binds to them. So the chemical comes in the brain, this receptor grabs a hold of it and starts a series of things in the brain. So there are chemicals that are natural that we have in food and different things that we do that stimulate those. It turns out nicotine goes to that and it stimulates the brain in multiple ways. It helps with anxiety, it helps with feeling good, different things that we were never meant to have that much nicotine coming into the brain. So that's one of the reasons why it works. We'll talk a little bit more about addiction in just a minute. Okay, well, they did some series of asking why people vape. So for adults, again, it came out as a potential to reduce risk for current smokers if they completely transition from cigarettes to e-cigarettes. However, it turns out that a majority of adults who use e-cigarettes also still smoke. They'll use the e-cigarettes when they're in a building or when they're in a place they can't smell. They're going to a presentation. They don't want the smell of smoke, but they need the nicotine. So they're using a combination of both cigarettes and e-cigarettes. Okay, youth. Why do youth use e-cigarettes? Okay, let's look. So these are e-cigarette commercials right here for Juul. Remember, Juul again has the pod, most popular. Looks like the computer USB port. So curiosity is a big one. So they say they're curious about it. Well, why is someone curious? Look at these advertisements. Nice smile, happy, good-looking hairdo, good clothes. A little bit of a provocative thing with the midriff there. Here we've got, looks a little bit with the flavors. Here you've got lots of friends. This really popular guy in the middle's got his arms around it. We're going to be happy. All of these things are things that bring out curiosity. Now, another reason youth use Juuls is you get a super buzzed off it. This was Kyler. He's a teenager who posted a video about getting suspended in school for having a Juul. Now, this is a laboratory. It's hard to see with this screen here, but that's a big place where people use Juuls, is in the restrooms. Because you can go in the restroom, it doesn't smell, it doesn't set off smoke alarms, you can go for a bathroom break. So these are all pictures here of places in school where people have been using that. So they smoke for a buzz, they vape. So advertising is the other one. So it's marketed to youth. So tobacco, when it first came out, was marketed with multiple things. They marketed with sexual themes, they marketed with macho themes, they marketed with sports, they marketed with all kinds of things that people want to be. And that's the same thing that's happening here. So it says e-cigarette marketing, you can't read that, I'll read it for you, including product design and package appeals to a young audience. For example, many e-cigarettes feature bright colors and fruit candy, alcohol, or other flavors youth find attracting and interesting. Many themes in e-cigarette marketing include sexual content, customer satisfaction, and are parallel to themes and techniques that the tobacco industry aimed at youth and young adults in their advertising and promotion of conventional cigarettes. So in 2018, which was last year, more than 5 in 10 middle school and high school students, so 50%, more than 14 million youth said they had seen e-cigarette advertising. So even if they aren't using e-cigarettes, half of them are seeing the advertising and thinking, I wonder what this is. I wonder what it's like. Why is my friend doing that? And then after that, they've found internet, TV, and movies, magazines, and newspapers all had e-cigarette advertising in it. So what does that mean? Flavors. Most of the youth, 68% of e-cigarette in high school said they use it for the flavor. Okay, so we think of smoke, when you think of being at a campfire and getting smoke, no one really likes that. They always move away from the smoke. And when someone smokes around you with a regular cigarette, most people nowadays, yeah, they pull a face. It's like, please don't smoke around me. Cities have all put smokers outside, but e-cigarettes, you don't have that smell, and you have a sweet smell if you're going to get a smell, and you get the taste of the flavors. So menthol, alcohol, candy, fruit, chocolate, sweets. So it says about 9 out of 10 young adults and 8 out of 10 youth e-cigarette users use flavored e-cigarettes. And ages 12 to 17 reported they used e-cigarettes because they come in flavors I like. So the flavoring is something that the people making the Juuls and the e-cigarettes have put out there to draw youth and teens and eventually adults into the way to use that. So the bottom line is advertising plus flavors equals youth e-cigarette use. It's a combination that is hard to ignore. Now, what does that do? So flavoring chemicals, it turns out, this was from Reuters in February. They induce genetic changes in the bronchial epithelial cells. So You have the trachea here, comes into the trachea, then goes to the bronchi, and the cells inside there are designed to do different things. They're designed to sweep things out, to keep bad things out of your lungs. There are mucus things in there, so if they get irritated, they create mucus to trap things. So it turns out that the e-cigarette flavoring, that one of the chemicals, it changes the way that those cells work. And we don't know what's going to happen in the future in terms of cancer, but one of the changes with cancer, one of the thoughts is you change the genetics of the epithelial cells, and those types of changes can lead to those types of things. So there are two chemicals found that both chemicals induced hundreds of genetic changes in the cells and impaired the ability of cells to function properly. There were two chemicals studied. They were called diacetyl and its chemical cousin 2,3-pentanedi. That's why I failed organic chemistry, something like that. There are risks from the chemicals. They're not without their own risks. And we're going to talk about some of the things. So they contain nicotine. They contain ultrafine particles. So ultrafine particles, I'm having a hard time reading that. Let me find it here. Maybe it's in another slide. And they contain heavy metals. So how many know what Flint, Michigan means? What does Flint, Michigan mean to you?
Bad water.
Bad water. What was in the water in Flint, Michigan?
I think it was lead.
Lead. Lead is a heavy metal. And it turns out that the vaping, the chemicals there, have heavy metals, including lead. They also have volatile organic compounds. Who knows what a volatile organic compound is?
Gasoline.
Gasoline. That's why our cars run. You have a spark that sparks the gasoline in it. So, yes. So if you inhale volatile compounds, it can affect how you breathe and what your oxygen content is. And so the vaping also has organic chemicals in it. And so another reason that people use vaping instead of cigarettes, most teens, if you ask them, would you smoke? Most of them say, ew, no, I don't want to smoke. But if you ask them if they vape, it turns out that 3 out of 5 teens believe that e-cigarettes cause little or only some harm, as long as they only are used sometimes but not every day. So 1 in 5 young adults, so we're talking 19 to 25, believe that e-cigarettes cause no harm. So let's talk about the risks. I've got a handout for you when we finish that has the risks of vaping that you can read through. But the part of the brain that's responsible for decision making and impulse control, which is more of the frontal lobes, it's not fully developed during adolescence. That's why teenagers do things that we say, that's not really safe. Are you sure you should have done that? Because that's not formed. So young people are more likely to take risks with health and safety, including the use of nicotine and other drugs. They're also uniquely at risk for long-term, long-acting effects of exposing their developing brains to nicotine. I'm going to show you a slide that shows why that is. So the risks include nicotine addiction, mood disorders. What are mood disorders? Depression. Anxiety. There's one called dysphoria. All of those things, they are associated with the risk of nicotine itself. And you also have permanent lowering of impulse control. And I'll show you why permanent can be something that takes place in the brains. Nicotine changes the way synapses are formed. So synapses in your brain, you have a brain cell that comes down and it has a place that grabs onto the next head of the cell. That's called a synapse, and they send messages back and forth. And our brain's designed so that we don't have to remember. How many of you, when you brushed your teeth this morning, remember how you brushed your teeth? Do you do 3 times on this side, 1 in the front, 4 in the back? Do you do it for 1 minute, 2 minutes? Why can't you remember how you brush your teeth?
Because it's a habit.
And what does a habit mean?
You can't stop doing
A habit you can't stop doing. So the brain's designed so that we conserve energy. And when you teach it to do something, it forgets to think about it. So it becomes automatic. So when I brush my teeth, I can be thinking about something else, but I almost always do it exactly the same way. I do this side, and then this side, and then this side, and this side, and this side, and this side, and then I do it again. And I can be thinking or singing or doing something. I can't sing when I brush my teeth. That doesn't really work. But your brain does that. So as youth use nicotine, until about age 25, the brain is still growing, and you're creating these synapses here. So each time a new memory is created or a new skill is learned, stronger connections or synapses are built into the brain cells. And so you learn how to do something, you don't have to remember how to do it again. That's why an athlete who shoots a foul shot that does it thousands of times and does it correctly, it's just natural. It becomes part of, they don't have to think, okay, I've got to have my hand here, underneath here. I've got to let go with the finger. I've got to get a spin on it. I've got to follow through with the finger. My eye has to be right there. That's all programmed into the brain. So the nicotine, because of the addiction is a form of learning, adolescents get addicted more easily than adults because they're still forming those synapses. And once they form them, it's easier to use. And the nicotine in e-cigarettes and other cigarettes also prime the adolescent brain for addiction to other drugs such as cocaine. So they learn those receptors, those nicotine receptors want to grab onto something and hold on to that. So I like this advertisement. It's not like you can buy a new brain. You've only got one brain. If you get synapses set up, you can't go to the store and say, I like that one, I want it. That's a neurosurgeon. I like that one, that's a school teacher. Give me that brain right there, that's a musician. Once you set the synapses in your brain, many of them are set, and it takes a lot of hard work to get those synapses undone. Therefore, the young man that came to me that I said at the beginning, he was having a hard time coming off of the e-cigarettes because his brain had learned to use them. Okay, so in conclusion with this part, e-cigarette aerosol is not harmless. It contains nicotine or other drugs that we talked about that can harm the developing brain, which continues to develop until age 25. So nicotine exposure can impact learning, memory, and attention. What are the things that high school and college students and middle school attentions need the most when you're in school? Learning, memory, and attention. And it turns out because of the way the nicotine works that those are all affected. So using it in adolescence can increase risk for future addiction. And the aerosol can potentially expose to harmful substances, including the heavy metals, the volatile organic metals, and the ultrafine particles that can go clear down into the lungs. Okay, so this was yesterday's, you notice here the date, 4/24. This came out 2 days ago. NBC News reported on its website that a new study demonstrates dozens of popular e-cigarette products are contaminated with bacterial and fungal toxins that can cause lung disease. The impurities were found in nearly a quarter of single-use e-cigarette cartridges or pods and in over 3/4 of e-liquids. This was a team at the Harvard School of Public Health that did the study. They assessed 75 popular e-cigarette products from top 10 U.S. selling brands, and they published that in the environmental health products. So behavior risks, and the evidence says that e-cigarette use is actually now linked, as they're doing the studies, to alcohol, beginning of alcohol use and beginning of marijuana use, as well as we already said cocaine. Again, you set your brain on these addictive paths with these nicotine receptors, and it makes it easier to become addicted to something else that comes up. Now, who then is vaping? Is your neighbor vaping? Is your neighbor's kid vaping? Is your kid vaping? Is your grandkid vaping? Let's look at the numbers. Okay. So this top line right here, this first is someone who's ever tried an e-cigarette. So we're looking here on this side of percent, so it goes up to 40% there. This side is the year. So this was 2011. The top line is high school students. The bottom line is middle school students. So again, this is 12 to 14. This is 15 to 18. So ever at all tried an e-cigarette, 40% of high school, about 38% of high school students have tried an e-cigarette. Okay, so that's, you line up your high school class, that means 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Almost 5 have used it. These 5 haven't, but they're all curious. They're all watching the advertisements. They're all seeing things. Who knows what will happen next? Middle school students, again, 12, 11 through 14. You're looking at about 15% have tried an e-cigarette at some point. Okay? Now, the question is, how many are using regularly? So this was a study in the past 30 days, how many US middle and high school students have used an e-cigarette in the last 30 days? So again, the top line is high school, the bottom line is middle school. What happened in the year 2013 and the year 2014? What came out? The Juul, yeah, the USB. And we talked about that 600% surge of where things are sold. So this correlates with the introduction of Juul. And so now about 18% of high school students, about 17% of high school students use e-cigarettes in the last 30 days. This was up through 2015. It's gone up since then. We read that other slide said 20% now in 2018 are regularly using e-cigarettes. And out of middle school students, about 6% are using e-cigarette regularly. Now, the question comes up, what about kids who start using e-cigarettes? What does it do for smoking? Do they end up using regular cigarettes? Let's see what it shows us here. So this is the percent. Again, this goes up to 25%. This top line is using both e-cigarettes and cigarettes. The middle line is cigarettes only. And this one is e-cigarettes only. So this is 18 to 24 years. This is the kids, okay? This one's greater than 25 years old. This is the adults. So of adults, 13% use only cigarettes, 4% use both e-cigarettes and cigarettes, and only 2% use e-cigarettes. But in the youth, 7% are using both, and 6% are using the e-cigarettes. So, conclusion, for the youth, the use of multiple tobacco products put youth at even greater risk for addiction. It increases the frequency and intensity of cigarette smoking in the future, but any e-cigarette use or cigarette use is unsafe, we're finding out. So, 7 out of 10 high school students, amongst high school cigarette smokers, 7 out of 10 also use e-cigarettes. So if you're a regular high school smoker, 7 out of 10 still use e-cigarettes. Again, during that time when you don't want to be smoking around your parents or wherever you happen to be. Okay, now, where do youth use e-cigarettes? Any ideas?
In class sometimes.
In class sometimes. Actually, teachers will turn around to write on the board, and while they turn around, kids will have a contest to see who can get the quickest vape out and not get caught. Okay? Our high school students, have you had anybody vape in class? Yeah? Okay. It does happen. We're going to show you why here. So let's look here. Disneyland, just this year, as of May 1st, starting May 1st, which was tomorrow, next day, sometime next week, starting at May 1st, they're going to eliminate all smoking sections from inside the parks. So they'll no longer be able to smoke at any Disney's US parks, and that includes Disney Downtown, which is not actually inside the park. They'll be available outside the park's entrances, but e-cigarettes and vape pens are also included in the ban. So it's getting out there that that's taking place. So in Kentucky, Wisconsin, California, Massachusetts, they're all concerned because of the sleek design and resemblance to USB drives. They're easy for students to conceal and use in school, sometimes in the middle of class. They produce less smoke, making them more discreet. Colleges are also starting to look at it. Again, we talked about the Juuls. Because of its low-profile design, it allows students to easily conceal their habit and inhale the flavored nicotine vapor in school restrooms, hallways, and in classrooms undetected. And some students are open about it. I don't know if you hear some kid talk about, my friend was ghosting. Any idea what ghosting is? Okay. Ghosting is where you inhale, you let it out, and then you try and suck it back in before it gets away. So they inhale the ring and then suck it back in. That's ghosting. And so they're doing tricks. There was a YouTube video with as young as 13 sharing tips on how to conceal their jewels and other vaporize in the sleeves of their hoodies so they can be used in high school highways. They're also hollowing out markers and putting their USB drive inside the marker so that in their backpack, if their parents look, they've just got markers, no USB drives. And so they can do that without getting caught. So, any idea what this is? Or this, or this, or this.
Oh, yeah.
You should turn on the lights so we can see it.
We can't turn the light off. They're on all the time. These are called vaping sweaters. I looked on the internet to order these. They're called integrated vaporizer sweaters. The strain that comes out, it's got the end of the vape. So you can vape from right there. So she can vape just right there with nobody knowing. Here's one like that. All of these are different designs. They even have short sleeve for the summertime with a hoodie that you've got that has the strings on it. This is a favorite brand now that has got a hoodie brand with one of the favorite brands. Here's another one. These are called e-hoodie integrated hoodies and with all different colors and all different types that you can use. So the Surgeon General said this. This just came out this year. He said, I, Surgeon General, United States Public Health Service, Vice Admiral Jerome Adams, am emphasizing the importance of protecting our children from a lifetime of nicotine addiction and associated health risks by immediately addressing the epidemic of youth e-cigarette use. The recent surge of e-cigarette use among youth, which has been fueled by a new type of e-cigarettes that have recently entered the market, is a cause for great concern. We must take action now to protect the health of our nation's young people. Okay, so we're going to talk about what action. Yes?
Question, are there age limits on who, when you buy these products?
Okay, are there age limits on when you can buy these products? Up until this year, there were not. This year, they made it 18. And up until this year, you could buy them anywhere. You could buy them, they weren't behind the counters. This year, some states have passed laws, and the federal government's looking at making them the same as cigarettes, back behind the counters. The laws have not been applied to advertising yet, like cigarette advertising. It's still available to be advertised any place. So that may change. So when we ask what can we do, certainly from a public health standpoint, using our legislatures, both federal and local and state, is something that can be done.
And do they not have that warning on them that cigarettes?
They do not have a warning on them at this point. There's some legislation out to do the warning. The problem is they haven't been out long enough for us to say that it causes cancer. Remember, it only started in 2007, which is 12 years, and that generation hasn't gone long enough to have epidemiology studies to see what that's going to do or what's involved with it.
Isn't nicotine what causes the cancer in cigarettes?
Probably not. Probably all the chemicals that go with it. Although nicotine can certainly change things. But as we saw with the e-cigarettes, it was the chemicals in the vaping fluid that was probably causing the changes. The nicotine causes the addiction in the brain, but not necessarily the cancer.
Gotcha.
So, would you like your child to be the ones you ask, is it going to cause cancer? Do you want your child to be the one who we follow for 30 years to see what's going to happen in 30 years? So let's go here.
Some say e-cigarettes aren't dangerous,
But science shows nicotine can harm teens' developing brains.
no matter how they're exposed.
Let's do an experiment to find out.
Here's a teen who won't be using e-cigarettes.
Now we need one willing to risk their brain development.
Anyone care to volunteer your kid?
Anyone?
I'm Dr. Vivek Murthy, U.S. Surgeon General. Your kids are not an experiment. Protect them from e-cigarettes.
Okay, any volunteers to have your kid be there? Any kids volunteer to be there? Okay. So e-cigarette use poses a significant and avoidable health risk to young people in the United States. So I've got a handout here called Frequently Asked Questions. This is from the Surgeon General, know the risk. When it said right here, know the risk, he said know the risk. So if you want to pass those out, Casey, they're right there on the table. This has frequently asked questions that has most of the information that we just talked about that you can take with you to do. There's also for parents, I've got a parent information handout here, and I've also got a handout about how to talk with your kids about e-cigarette use. I want you all to have the frequent questions, and parents, your kids are welcome too. I just didn't copy as many of those here with those. So I'll have Casey put those back on the table. Now there's one other thing that's available. There's a program called Catch My Breath. Here are these, Casey. Let me hand those to you. While you hand the rest of those out. There's a program called Catch My Breath. It's out of, I think it's Texas. They put together a program to be taught in schools and or youth organizations that talk about these things put at the level of the students. And after they did these classes, 7 out of 8 students say they're less likely to use e-cigarettes after the Catch My Breath. And so on the bottom of these parent handouts is the number and the website for Catch My Breath. So if you're asking, what can we do to protect our youth? I think Nebo School District's a good place to start. Let's take the Catch My Breath to Nebo School District and say, would your parent committee review this and see if that's something that we can either as volunteers in the community come in and teach, or have our health teachers teach, or do a specific program, assembly associated with that. So we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Catch My Breath has done that for us, that we can use that. Okay, what other things could we do to help protect our youth?
Protect them from the advertising.
Okay, protect them from the advertising is the answer. That's a great way. We can get involved actively in terms of trying to do what the FDA has done and the federal government's done with the cigarette advertising. Okay, as parents, what can you do? Yes?
Seems like you should talk to them and educate them
Okay.
about it. Hopefully it won't just give them more ideas.
So she says, hopefully we can educate our kids and hopefully it won't give them more ideas. That's one of the concerns whenever we bring up a public health thing is, are we causing kids to do things? It's one of the questions that we have about, for example, from a public health standpoint, we have the human papillomavirus or HPV vaccine that protects against cancer. But when it first came out, many people said, oh, if I talk to my kids about it and give it to them, it's going to make them think that they're not going to get, there's not going to be a problem if they indulge in premarital sex. So talking about it really does not. As it said here, 7 out of 8 students said they're less likely to use it after learning something about it. So last Sunday we had family down. I had this presentation ready, so we sat the family down and we went through this presentation so that they had a chance to talk about things. One of the handouts says how to talk with your kids about that. Okay, what questions do you have? What other questions? I've overwhelmed you with material. Yes?
When they vape, what do they feel in their lungs? I say that because smoking, it's not a good feeling.
Right. So his question is,
what kind of feeling do they have?
what do you feel when you vape? Now, I can't answer that from personal experience, so I'm just telling you what the science says. So the way that Juul did the nicotine, liquid nicotine, took away the irritant factor of the lung. So the lung is designed, if irritants get in there, to put all those cells together to get that back out of there. It makes you cough, makes you do those things. Because of the way it's done, it doesn't give you that same feeling. So you don't get that, I can't stand this, I really don't want to do this. So, and you get the flavor, the taste of the flavor. So you get that, you get 2 reinforcements from it. You get the flavor that smells good. What does food do to us? I said flavor, and what happened to my mouth? It started to water. So flavors give you that, if you think of coconut or you think of cherry, mint, all of the flavors they were talking about, they give you this sensation of well-being. And then you get the nicotine going to the receptors up there that slow down different things. So you don't get that initial cough to get rid of it that stops you from, some people, from ever smoking.
Just, is the feeling that they get different with smoking than vaping? Is it more of a jolt or something? Or why would they go from vaping to cigarettes? And what is the cost?
Okay, several questions. So what is the cost? So I asked my college student, I said, how many of your friends vape? And he said, oh, there are several. I said, how much is it? He says, well, most of my college friends can find a pod for about $7 or $8. So that's a pack of cigarettes to use a pod a day. A pack of cigarettes now is about $6, $7. So it's a little more expensive to vape. So if you're after the nicotine from an expense standpoint, you may decide to smoke, except when you're around people you don't want to know that you smoke. So you go back to vaping. So there's that. Both have nicotine, both satisfy the receptors. When you vape and smoke both, you get the nicotine two ways. One is through the lungs that gets into the bloodstream. The other is through the mucous membranes that then have a direct ascent to the brain. So smoking gets the chemical to the place in the brain that wants that satisfaction very quickly. And that's why it's hard to quit smoking, because you very quickly satisfy that need for the addiction. And so that's the reason why it's so addictive, is it very quickly satisfies whatever all of those receptors and the nicotine receptors in the brain do.
Do you know the relative concentration of vaping versus cigarettes with the nicotine? Do they get more of a buzz from vaping than do from a cigarette?
I don't know that. It said that the nicotine percent was 1 point. Oh, I'm sorry. He asked, is the percent of nicotine delivered through a cigarette different than that through vaping? What percent? And the vaping Juul pods have 1.7% nicotine in the liquid. And one pod is equal to a pack of cigarettes. So I would imagine they're about the same, but I don't really know, because most users use a pod of Juul and a pack of cigarettes in a day. So it's probably about the same with it. Okay. Our youth, what questions do you have about vaping or about your friends? What would you tell your friends? What would you like to know that you could tell your friends if they want you to vape?
Say no.
Okay. Say no. Just say no is a good way, but that's not always sufficient. But it's good to know and have the information that you need. So take your handout. Again, there's the 2 parent sheets back in the back we'd like you to have. So you've got information. Any of us, yes, go ahead.
I gather from what you said earlier that this education program is not yet in our schools.
It is not. And again, when you look at that graph I showed you with the skyrocketing use after 2013 and 2014, from a school standpoint, putting curriculum into place, that's not very much time. 3 years is not very much time to develop a curriculum that then's taken up by schools. And I think that's why Catch My Breath curriculum that's already made is a good way for us to bring it to the schools and say, here's something already tried that works. Can we look at incorporating it?
And that's on one of these handouts.
On the bottom of the handout, it has the website and the phone numbers to call for that program. Yes?
Just going to point out, it looks like it's only 4 lessons and it's free.
Yes. They had a grant from, I read through their website, and I can't remember who gave them the grant. I should, because they need the credit for it. But because of the grant, they're able to offer it free. There's no charge to use that.
Easier to get in our schools.
Yeah, we should be able to do that. So, okay. Any of us from Canyon View Medical Group are more than willing to do our seminars. We're doing a seminar once or twice a month here. The next one coming up is when?
Next week.
Next week, and it's Women's Care will be next week. They're also available on our website. We've have the YouTube video of them. We're also willing, if you have something specific related to what you see presented, of contacting us, and we're willing to try and help from a public health standpoint, or groups that want the information that we're presenting. So thank you for letting me present, and thank you for being here, and I hope you never jewel. Okay?